And in three, two, one. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Investment Property Income Podcast. My name is Jeff Eady. Joining me today, as always, is my main man, the moon to my stars, Mr. Jonathan Tilger, one of Canada's top mortgage brokers. How are you today, Jonathan?
Phenomenal, and I always love your intro. So great. Always a pleasure speaking with you.
Well, I hope it's okay. We have a little fun once in a while, JT. So today I didn't give you quite as good an intro because I have somebody I'm really happy about having on the show. We've been working on getting him on here for a while, and he does some really interesting things in some really interesting places. He's an entrepreneur, real estate investor specializing in value-added entitlement deals. That is a mouthful to say, but he began as an attorney and quickly found passion in real estate. He now is president of the firm Commercial and leads a whole team of agents, which you know all about, JT. Sales, leasing, land acquisition. Started, if I'm not mistaken, in the vacation rental property arena, and now he's doing some pretty cool stuff with value add and doing a lot of commercials. Formed his own firm, commercial firm. That's an interesting thing to say. Anyhow, before I screw this up any worse, please welcome Adam Gilbert. Adam, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing awesome. It's so great to be here, and thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. We're really excited to talk to you. I love the area that you work in. So why don't you tell us about the Indio Valley for our Canadian listeners that may not be familiar?
Yeah, well, you might have come because we do have a very large Canadian population, especially with the snowbirds that come down during our winter season. But we pretty much make up 9 desert cities from Palm Springs, which most people know, through Coachella and including Indio, Palm Desert, Rancho Mirage. If you visited any of those cities, again, it's the desert, so we're warm during the winter. Great tennis, golf. Our number one industry is tourism, followed by medical care, because we do have a more aged population of people who retire here.
So it's West Florida?
Basically.
Some people West call it less humid.
Yeah, it's dry Florida. Exactly.
Yes.
So, but we've been known as Heaven's Waiting Room, a lot of but I think it's changing a lot recently. We're now attracting, we were a big spring break destination for a number of years for college kids. That kind of went out the way. And so we have a lost generation. But now with Coachella Fest and some of the really cool events and festivals that are coming up, a whole new generation of people is falling in love with the desert. And since COVID, we're probably one of the top destinations, post-COVID destinations in the country, in the United States. So
wow, I can definitely speak from experience. I drove down to Coachella in my younger years. I think it was around 2004. I was down there, and absolutely beautiful. I can only imagine how much the festival has grown since then, and I'm pretty sure it was like 100,000 people back then. So
yeah, I was there 2004 also, and it's incredibly different.
Really, when Radiohead played?
Yeah, it's well, now it's 2 weekends. It's the same lineup, 2 weekends. And it's so many more people. It's probably about at least 30 to 40% more people, I'd say, since then.
So is that how you got into the vacation rentals?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, in 2011, kind of the start, we were in New York for the summer, me and my now wife, girlfriend at the time, and we stayed at this thing called an Airbnb, where we stayed in someone's room in Washington, D.C. And I was just like, my wife was, or my girlfriend at the time, she's like, this was weird. And I'm like, this is the future. This is amazing. And so, I came back to Palm Springs in 2011, and no one was on the platform. We're like at the time we were like 5 to 10 years behind, major metros. And so I threw a property that we had, my uncle's condo, on Airbnb, and it just did 3 times what it did, in terms of a long term. And then from there, I just kind of started packing on. By 2018, when I sold the company, we had 35 full-time rentals. April, we would do, hundreds of thousands in gross revenue. And even since then, it's exploded even more in the last, 3 or 4 years. So it's an incredible market out here, and a very interesting one for people to get into investing through a residential purchase that allows them to get, 2 to 3 times what they would typically get in rents.
Wow.
Just shows you the value that seeing a trend and jumping on a trend before everyone else does, what that can bring. And part of that, you said you traveled around seeing it from one side of the country. Hey, it's happening here. It's not here yet. And so that's one of the things, travel just opens your ideas, or opens your mind to ideas, which is incredible.
100%. And again, we're like a big little city, right? Like we have an airport, but like we have like Palm Springs has 45,000 full-time residents. And so we're often behind the times in terms of what is going on. So if you're going to major metros and seeing, it was like 3 to 4 years before like one of those poke places came here, that they were all in like these major areas. So I'm like, if you got in on that, like before it came here, like just follow what other people are doing. It's always my advice. Like, don't recreate the wheel.
So before we get into what you're doing now, well, no,
I love to get poke places.
No, you're a young guy. Yeah, I don't know how old you are, but I'm guessing I'm older than you, and I'm not that old. I'm only 43 as of last week. But how did you learn to recognize those opportunities, and what kind of mindset did you have right off the bat? Or was it nurture versus nature sort of thing?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. So I mean, I grew up Jewish, so it's like lawyer or doctor, right? Like that was the plan. And my family's all lawyers. So like I was going to law school and I was going to take over my family's firm. And so that was always my plan. My last quarter of undergrad, I was at UC Santa Barbara, and I took one of the new courses that they had on entrepreneurship. And it was before like that was very in vogue and everyone's an entrepreneur influencer on Instagram. And I was just like blown away because we got to do these like, kind of like a business school type case study where we like did a project and promoted the idea. And I just fell in love with it. And so in law school, I started, a couple of like web type companies. I was there 2008 to 2011. So all of these like blog, like fail blog and all those things were very popular. So I created one, and then, it didn't go anywhere. And then I did another one. And so just the process of starting companies over and over, even though they weren't successful, just opened my eyes. Okay, this is how you do it. This is what happens. And then when I started practicing law, it was 2011, and the United States real estate market had just come from bottom lows, and you're just seeing it go up like 13-14% per year. And I was like, all right, like, let me do a deal. And I did a deal, and I made like 25% of my yearly income in one deal. And I was like, light bulb. And so and so then I was like, I'm putting all my focus into this. This is more fun. I hate sitting behind a desk. Being a lawyer is so toxic and so adversarial. And so I just really recognized what my core DNA, what it was, and just kind of let that flow into terms of what was available in my market at the time and what I wanted to do.
And I like.
Sorry, go ahead, Jonathan.
I said I really like what you said there about you kept trying different ideas. It's like and at the beginning, I mean, obviously you got an idea at the beginning, takes off, makes money. That's what you want. But you sort of said, okay, what are you learning? And taking the pieces and learning that to sort of stack on for what's the next idea, until you found obviously one with real estate, which again, just that right time and really taking advantage of what was happening. But you had all the skills you'd learned to that point, which I'm sure just helped and gave you the confidence.
Exactly. And there's you can read all the books in the world, but until you do, you're never going to know what it's like to hire someone to do this and okay, well, now I got the domain. Now I file an LLC. Now I do this. You go through the process of doing all of those things enough times and waste enough money. And I mean, and again, I started off very cheap and, figuring out things on my own. But by the time I got to, I'm now on my 5th, 6th, 7th iteration of forming a company when I started the firm. And now I'm starting the firm Capital Group, which I'm sure we can kind of get into a little bit later. But now it's just going through the motions.
That's so cool. Yeah, Jonathan, you picked up on exactly what I picked up on. If I can quote you exactly, Adam, it said, even though they weren't successful. And when you say spending a lot of money, how much did it cost you to get your legal degree, your law degree?
Yeah, it's mid 6 figures.
Yeah. So how much did it cost you to get firm commercial?
Exactly.
It's comparable. That
Mhm.
education is, you can't get that anywhere. I mean, it's great to say you went to Wharton or to Harvard or wherever, but it's not until your feet hit the ground that you actually learn what you can't be taught there, especially since it's kind of a closed loop. A lot of people go straight from school into teaching school.
Yeah.
Whereas,
Definitely.
you don't know what it's like until you've had the crap kicked out of you and you're wondering what your next step is.
Yeah.
So is there any regimens you go through to keep your mindset straight when it comes to investing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say I'm naturally, just being an investor, you're naturally on the higher risk, side. I always ask people, do you like to play poker, or do you like to, when you go to Vegas, do you gamble? Right. I'm not a big gambler, right? I'll play blackjack for fun. But if I knew that I had, 2 kings or 2 aces every time and I could stack the deck, I'm betting every single time. And that's how I look at real estate. It's like, you look at enough deals and you're just like checking all the boxes, like, I've got a stacked deck. Like there's risk, but like, I'm definitely like doing this. But I try to surround myself with other CEOs and entrepreneurs who are doing that. So I'm a member of Entrepreneurs Organization, which is international. And I know there's lots of chapters all over. I have a small group of 8 CEOs that we meet once a month to go over our issues, our problems, to talk deals out, do all those things. And so having that board of directors of people who I respect and trust definitely helps me keep my mind sharp when I'm evaluating deals and making sure that if I'm investing mine or my investors' money, that I'm doing so. And I've thought through, most of the negative things that can come.
Yeah, I think it's, everybody wants to be all super positive, but when you're talking about risk, and I'm going to expand this question out, I think it's important to have a negative aspect to it. What's the worst case scenario? Do you how do you assess risk?
So it depends. There's some things that I do that are literally, a coin flip. So a lot of my zone change projects, I'll tie up some land and I'll try to do a zone change and get it entitled for something. And that really depends on, the city council and whether I can lobby. And, a lot of it is out of my hands, as much as I can push it forward, lobby, and do all those things. And then I can buy a value, because if I don't get the zone change, then I've wasted a year. I've wasted, $100,000 to $150,000, and I've got no benefit out of it. With a building, that's primarily or fully vacant, I know I can lease it out or I can do things to do that. I say that's less of a risk because now I'm holding an asset as opposed to an option. And so each deal is going to have its own risk. And I'm willing to bet in terms of my investment in terms of time and money based on that risk. And so that's kind of how I look at each individual deal.
Yeah. And Jonathan, what is it you say about risk as a function of, what do you say?
You say something great.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. I
remember.
can't think of it now either.
You've said it 1,000 times and you can't think of it now.
No,
that tells me Jonathan's excited about talking to you, Adam.
Hopefully it got the gears going.
Well, the question I want to go back to, because you talked about having your, call it board of directors or just sort of mastermind group.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so important, regardless of whether you're talking investing or just a field or anything that you're involved in, something you got an interest in. How did you find these people? What was the process you went to actually, did you put this group together or did you join it? Or, I mean, just curious about that process.
Yeah, so I joined an existing group. And so I had a mentor who was in an organization called YPO, Young Professionals Organization, which is a really popular, and I looked at the criteria for joining that and I did not qualify. My business was not big enough at all. And so, I was like, okay, so I'm not YPO material quite yet. What else is out there? And I literally like Google searched and I found this international organization. And again, there's different criteria for each chapter. There's chapters all over the place. I actually have a lot of EO contacts that I'm talking to in Canada as well, because I know there's chapters up there. I went to Taiwan and met with the the Taiwan chapter. And so again, international organization. But I found my local chapter. I submitted an application. I met the revenue criteria, and then I was in. And so it's a well-established organization that has these rules in place, that has this organization that has great events and learning events, and once in a lifetime activities. So it's been a really great. My business has gone like this since I joined that organization.
Yeah, you really need to surround yourself with people that are like-minded. What is it? I think it was Jim Rohn said, if you look at the 5 people around you, you'll have the same bank accounts, the same attitudes.
Yeah.
It's super important to surround yourself with the right people. That's why Jonathan's my only friend. I hope he thinks I'm a friend. Yeah, I want to take a step back here for a second, because there's a whole bunch I want to ask you. My mind's racing a little bit. I'm over caffeinated. It's later in the day. What caused the leap from vacation rental properties to going commercial? Because that's a big step.
Yeah, definitely. So it's a good question. So when I was practicing law, I got my broker's license, and I really started just doing the vacation rentals, again, 1 or 2 properties just on the side for extra cash, to then invest into other things. And then I started doing the brokerage side of things. And so again, I asked another mentor who probably owns 300 APNs. He's what I want to be in 20 years. I was like, if you could go back time, and he was also a lawyer also. It's like, if you could go back in time, I think I was 25 at the time. So it's 10 years ago, if we want to age me. I was like, if you could go back and tell your 25-year-old self, like what should you do? What would it be? And he's like, I would go into brokerage, because I do deals now. You're going to get an education in terms of how deals work from people who are more experienced than you, and in a further state, and you're going to get paid to get this education. And so I'm like, okay, blah, blah, blah. And so, start like anyone, you start with whatever you can get. So $3,000 house, and then another one, and then another one, and then kind of built my way up. And then he actually gave me that mentor gave me my first big commercial deal. And so I just learned on the job, kind of figuring it out with him guiding me. And then once I did commercial, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. You have sophisticated buyers, sophisticated sellers. They understand there's no paperwork. And only function of commercial real estate value is how much money you can make. Like, that's how you value it. Like, what's the cap? What's the return on investment? And I'm like, oh, okay, like, you're buying this with an ROI built in. Like, this is amazing. And then a secondary factor of it on the brokerage side was, in Palm Springs area, like, there's a lot of retirees. So everyone gets the real estate license. I think there's 5,000 residential realtors in
45,000 people.
Yeah. Well, luckily there's about 1 million people here during the season time,
Okay.
which is coming up. And I think there's like 50 commercial brokers, and 10 of them are the only ones doing anything. And so I was like, okay, like, let me see. 1, I want to invest in commercial. That's kind of what I'm looking towards. And 2, there's much less competition, and the competition that is here, they're all, again, we have a missing generation. There's no Gen X here. So they're all a bit older. They don't have they're not using technology in the ways that I would. And so there's going to be a gap in terms of services, and a vacuum when these people retire that I can come in and fill.
Good eyes. Yeah, they talk about recognizing a niche, but it really is knowing your product and learning about your product, and then the opportunities start to present themselves. That's smart, especially realizing there's no Gen Xers, because where's the competition? In 5-10 years, there is none. You're top of the food chain.
And also recognizing you're the only one or you've got the most knowledge in the technology space there, and so you can really expand that in ways that they wouldn't even consider, or they look at and say, nah, I don't need it.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember when I started doing videos, like, I think it was like 4 years ago now, and everyone was like, that's weird. Just kind of like just like lifestyle videos, not as people weren't even doing it for properties yet, but but now everyone's like, oh, wow. Like I see, and I follow exactly what you're doing. And so again, it's just, I didn't come up with that idea. I saw influencers doing that. Right. And so I just took it from them, but no one was doing it here. So I don't try to come up with novel ideas. I just steal from what's already working in other marketplaces.
And that's what Steve Jobs said. Good entrepreneurs borrow, great entrepreneurs steal.
Yeah. Exactly.
And of course, there's these crazy. What are these podcast things? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Well, you know what? It is funny because how else are we going to meet? There's a great opportunity here that we're probably going to be able to capitalize on as associates down the road. But how else are we going to meet if it wasn't for the internet and something crazy like a podcast? Who would think of these things as being great business tools? But they really are. Not only are we informing people, but we get to meet a lot of great people because of what we're doing.
Exactly.
So now, where are you at? How big is your brokerage, like as far as employees?
Yeah, so I built up a brokerage, and again, this is probably another interesting story. Up in 2019, I had a partner, and we had another company called Gilbert and so we decided to split ways. And so I pretty much started from scratch end of 2019, and then early 2020. I don't know if you guys heard, but there was this pandemic that happened.
Really?
And so
I'm in the country. I don't. It doesn't.
And so like I had all these deals that I built up, and then March 2020 happened. Like commercial, just like all stopped. But then at least here, the residential market just like started going on fire because we have vacation rentals. Everyone's leaving major metros and they're coming down to Palm Springs, and they have $1 million 1-bedroom condos in San Francisco. And then for $1 million, you can get a 4-bedroom house with a pool, and it's like Disney dollars for them. And they're just like, they're just coming in and taking everything in our market. And so I went back to started doing residential because I followed the market. Right. And now that's kind of tapering off, and I'm doing a lot more on the commercial side. So I always just adjust and do what the market is dictating. But to answer your question and to go back to it, we have, I think we're at like 6 commercial agents plus myself. And wow. We've brought on a lot of them very recently. We have some people come and go. We have a certain way of doing things. And so we have high expectations for what we expect from performance. But I'm really excited with our nimble team of commercial agents who are really making a mark in our limited market.
So I guess with having a team, you're going to be someone who needs to know a lot of leadership. What do you think would be your number one value when it comes to leadership?
I think it's lead by example. And so again, I know my strengths and weaknesses as a leader. I am, some people either want praise, title, or money in my,
were you in network marketing?
Never. But I'm really bad at praise. And I know that's like what a lot of people want. I'm just like, yeah, of course you did. Like you closed that deal. Like we're supposed to, like, that's what we do. So I'm like really bad at that. But I brought on an operations manager who's like, understands that and can make up those gaps. And so as a leader, I think, again, recognizing your weaknesses as a leader is really important to fill in those gaps, so that depending on what people need to feel fulfilled as part of your team or as an employee or independent contractor, however it is, that they're fulfilled in the areas that you are good at and that you're not good at. But overall, I think just leading by example, helping people when they need, being a resource. But, I always see that there's that imagery, right, of like the people pulling the king on the thing, and he's like, whipping them, and it's like, not a good leader. And then a good leader is like the guy in front who's pulling with them. But lead by example, live your core values if you set them up, and we have, just try to help your team as much as possible.
No, that's huge. And you know what? I think you kind of glazed over something that I think is extremely important, and that is not only knowing your weakness, but not trying to live your weakness. Sticking with what you know is as important, and this is what I'm good at, so let me find somebody who makes that part up. That's brilliant. That's exactly why I have Jonathan. He's good at everything, and I'm only good at like 3 things, and one of them's talking.
And actually, as you say that, it's like the talking thing is probably my one of my weaknesses. So I'm glad Jeff takes care of that side of it.
You just come in and you snipe with the great commentary, and let him just ramble on.
just as you twice. as you were saying that, actually, one of the things I remember hearing is actually someone who's a former professional athlete who was getting into business, and he had a coach, and he told me, he's like, listen, he said when he got the coach was like, listen, you're going to have a hard time. I said, why is that? Well, you're a former athlete. You're used to working on your weaknesses. I'm going to tell you, forget about your weaknesses. Hire someone to take care of your weaknesses. You work on what your strengths and what you love. And then you won't feel like you're going to work. And you're going to get people who are coming in that love that area. And the whole place is going to feel so much happier and better.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, we do that. As soon as I see a pro forma, I'm like, here, Jonathan.
Exactly. I
met with the guy. I looked through the executive summary. Here's the pro forma. You look at that.
I'm always like, it feels right.
Yeah.
Please double check and confirm.
Show me the numbers I need to know.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Adam, I think that's a really good spot for us to wrap this up. We're definitely going to have you back for another episode right after this. But how do people get a hold of you, and why should they get a hold of you?
Yeah, definitely. I'm incredibly good looking, and you should follow me on Instagram. If you're interested in investments in the Palm Springs market, or just anything like that, reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to you about vacation rentals or commercial, or what's going on in the market. Or on the other side, some of my development deals and value add projects. The Firm Capital Group should be launching very shortly, and we'll be happy to take on investors who are looking to get into this market. So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, usually at Adam Gilbert 13. So just reach out, DM, or my cell phone is everywhere. So just call or text anytime.
Sweet. And I do understand you have a couple of good connections in politics in Palm Springs.
Yeah, just a couple.
For those who don't know, he is married to the mayor. That's pretty awesome. And congratulations on your now almost 1-year-old Aiden, right?
Aiden, yes.
Yes, yep. That's awesome.
So he's been awesome.
All right. So fantastic. Thank you so much, Adam. I really appreciate your time. Jonathan, I appreciate you. You always add I don't know what you add, but I appreciate you. And thank you for listening. If you want to get a hold of Adam, you certainly heard it from the horse's mouth there. You can get a hold of him all those ways. He's very easy to find. And if you want to get a hold of Jonathan or myself, you can certainly shoot us an email at jonathan@amortgageplan.com, or you can find our podcast on pretty much every place they put podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, all of those ones. And you can also download our book at investmentpropertyincomeBook.com. Gentlemen, again, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. And we'll see you soon.